We all have a purpose. We have a reason for being here, no matter who we are, what matter our age, whatever. We have a purpose. We have a reason for being here. And that is brought to us through what's important to us, what we are passionate about, what we care about. And so that leads us to knowing our purpose and fulfilling our purpose. If we can stay on track to simply, we just do what we love. We have been so conditioned that we have to do such and such a thing that we don't understand the fact that we actually are supposed to be doing what we love to do. Mm. And when we do that, it's very fulfilling for us and we're very successful. And if we're trying to go against that, we will just be very uncomfortable until we wake up, until we realize what we're doing.
Welcome to the MINDTRX podcast with breakthrough ideas to live your best life possible and how to make it happen. I'm Paul Scheele, and today we'll be talking with Bobbie Stevens. Bobbie Stevens is the co-founder of Unlimited Futures and has been providing programs for the development of human potential for over 40 years. She's a leading-edge coach specializing in the mind-heart connection and teaching techniques to help others develop their potential to function from an advanced level of consciousness, understanding, and experience. Hello, Bobbie. It is so good to be with you after such a long time.
Hi, Paul. It is great to see you. It's been such a long time. Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me to be on your podcast here.
It's a real delight and an honor for us. And our listener that is sitting right here with us is probably would love to know a little bit about how it is you came to discover your work. There's an important phrase that you referred to as if we really knew who we are and our ability to create, we would become unlimited. What does an unlimited being really mean? And how did you come to understand this in your work?
Well, it was quite interesting how I came to understand this, because I just, like everybody else, had been taught that we are limited, and this was many, many years ago. I found myself living alone for the first time in my life, and I had some quiet time. So I also had a bunch of questions, and those questions were about life, like, who am I? Why am I here? What should I be doing? And how does it all work? So I was pondering these questions, and at the time I was a flight attendant for Northwest Airlines, and which is now merged with Delta. And I lived in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I was traveling around the world, enjoying the travel. That was years before the travel got so hectic, and so I was enjoying myself. But in the back of my mind was this feeling that I had something else I was supposed to do. So I kept asking what, and I wasn't getting any answers. But anyway, I started checking into different things, and I read books. I read a lot of books on yoga and meditation and focusing techniques and breathing exercises and all kind of different books. And so I put together a whole routine that I started doing on a daily basis. I did this routine every day. And I found out that my whole life changed. My energy started increasing. My mind started becoming very clear. And I was also smoking at the time, which I quit smoking, which haven't the slightest desire for a cigarette since, which was kind of amazing in that. And I just thought the fact that I quit smoking was maybe the reason my mind was so clear. But I started feeling younger and more confident. And then I realized that I knew things that I had no way of knowing. So, things like who's on the phone when it rang, and that was years before caller ID. So I just noticed that I was understanding, hearing these things or seeing these things. So then I thought, well, I'll just experiment with asking questions. If I could I'll ask questions and see if I get any answers. Well, I did, and I got answers. And so then I started asking my big questions, like, who am I? Why am I here? What should I be doing with my life? And I got answers. And it just came to me very clearly how it all works. I could see you got something to say, Paul.
Well, I wanted to just add at that moment that you're talking about asking and getting answers. Before I met you, I got into yoga as well. I was initiated into the Himalayan tradition. I was teaching Hatha yoga at the meditation center. And I also discovered that if I were to have a question in mind, immediately upon bringing it into mind, an answer would be forthcoming. And somebody many years later described me as a mystic because I seem to have this connection to a mystical intelligence. So I love that you had that same realization. And as you and I both know, we all do.
I know.
Yeah. So please continue with your story.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because I know you went through my program just as you guys were starting learning strategies. And you were telling me that at the time is what your background was. And of course, it was all pretty new to me, except I had, this happened for me before I started the courses, of course. But I could just see that everything in existence is love. And this is something beyond the kind of love that we've ever experienced. But that's the closest that most of us have ever experienced to having any understanding of this. And I could see that love is the power source and that everything in existence is love expressing through intelligence and energy. So that's all there is, love, intelligence, and energy. And I clearly knew that that's who we all are. And as such, we're also creators, and that we are creating our own experiences. And together, we're creating world experiences. So I had this clear understanding that I could create anything. And I got a process, a 7-step process for creating anything. And so I started experimenting with it. So
it definitely works. It definitely works. And I've been sharing those ideas for decades now. It's so powerful. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about this creating, because I know early on in this work, many people would cross their arms and shake their head and saying, are you saying that I created that rape over there to that poor child in Minneapolis? Why are you saying I'm the creator of that? And people would take umbrage over some of these ideas. Bad things happened. Did I create that? And I would like to try to clarify that it's not always a direct cause effect to everything, but as many teachers of mine have said, everything I see is me. There is no out there. We are in a co-creative act of this magnificent universe that we're living in. So how do you address that idea of the limits of our own personal intellect and the unlimited nature of who we truly are?
Well, I could see that there is simply a field of intelligence that contains all knowledge. And we are units of this. So we receive we all have a purpose, and there's this overall intelligence is guiding the whole thing, and we get intuitive knowledge relating to our purpose usually, and we cannot intellectually figure it out.
Good distinction. Yeah. And our friend Lynn McTaggart, who wrote The Field, does a beautiful job of validating the scientific understanding of this energy field.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Science has been science. I made this discovery about 40 years ago, approximately, and science has been working on it and coming up with the exact same thing. It just took about 40 years later. And so now we know that we have two ways of gaining knowledge. One is intellectual, and that's how science does it. And the other one is intuitive. We can receive knowledge intuitively. We have always had, that's always been a potential. We didn't know it. And so now more and more people around the world are discovering that. So I think that's bringing us into a huge transformation that is possible for all of us to do that we have potential that we've known for years that we're using only a small percentage of our potential. But now we've become aware that we actually have that potential, and we can choose to develop it and create the lives we want for ourselves, and altogether create a totally different world, because we've created the world we're living in as a result of our incorrect way of incorrect beliefs and theories from the past.
Nice.
We built our world around that, and now as everyone can mostly see, that this chaotic world we're living in is not what we want, and we can change it.
And this does seem to be a time, you talk about general systems theory, that things get started, they advance, and then they decay. And before the decay happens, at the top of that next curve, as we start the new general system. And there's a transition, maybe 40, 60 years that we're going through as humanity is going through this great turning, where we're recognizing the unsustainable beliefs and practices of the past into a world where we recognize that we are living on this shining blue planet together. And what can we do together to co-create a world that's socially just and environmentally sustainable and economically sustainable and spiritually fulfilling for all of us? So I really want to applaud that you've continued in this work for all these decades. I want to talk about anybody being able to get more access to the intuitive knowledge that's available to us. And I've always appreciated your morning routine of yoga to help strengthen the spine and nervous system. And the way in which I have often paraphrased your description of it is, we've got this energy column ready to carry our full load and power that's available to us, but it's weak, it's narrow, it's not carrying the kind of power that it could. So we need to develop ourselves. We need to be able to meditate and develop our flexibility and our load carrying capacity. Do you feel I've gotten that right, or would you like to add to that to help people get access to their intuitive powers?
Well, there's a couple of things that block that ability, and one is stress. And of course, we have created a very stressful world, so we all experience that on a daily basis. And whenever our nervous systems are overstressed, we simply can't I mean, it just does not come through for us because the nervous system is not strong enough to handle it. So we have to work with the process. It is a process over time for strengthening the nervous system and refining our energy, because everything's energy. And as we refine our energy, we become more capable of connecting with universal intelligence. I mean, we're always connected. But there's 7 steps in the creative process. One of the steps is receiving intuitive guidance. And of course, we have to build up to that. The first step is getting clear about what you want. Second step is visualizing it. The third step is acceptance. And that's where our limited beliefs come in. That's where we find out that our beliefs are actually creating our experiences, and we can change them. So that's something that we have to do, because it's stress and our limited beliefs that's blocking our ability to receive intuitive guidance.
Excellent. So one of the things that often is asked of me is a person would say, well, I had this voice, I had this image, I had this thought, but how do I know that that's pure intuitive guidance and it's not just my ego or my will wishing or wanting that this would take place? How do you help people discern a clear message from a greater intelligence flowing through them compared to, well, this is just a byproduct of their own wanting or longing or desire or ego?
It's a process over time of strengthening the nervous system and changing those beliefs. And it's so totally different from an ordinary thought. And that's the thing that most people have the biggest problem with, is they don't know the difference. I had no idea that there was such a thing as intuition. And at the time that I got all this knowledge, I thought I was the only person in the world that knew this. So I, went back to school to see if they were teaching anything about this. They weren't at that point in time. They didn't have a clue. And I hope it's changed some, but it still hasn't changed enough because to actually integrate what we actually know now. But it's an experience, and it's just like somebody asking you what love is. You can't describe it. It's not an intellectual thing. And the same thing with intuition. I mean, we all have it, but we don't know how it works. And the reason, again, is the nervous system's overstressed, and we have those limited beliefs.
Well, I love the idea of being able to drive stress out of the system. When the brain is under cognitive stress, it affects our attention, our perception, our thinking, our decision-making, our memory. Everything along the cognitive chain is all negatively impacted. And if we could think about the human brain, the reptilian, the mammalian brain, the neocortex, and to be able to help us get to that place where our intuitive knowledge, that prefrontal cortex, is really where the action is. It really is about upregulating the brain, getting out of those stress-evoking habit patterns. So if I could have you speak to the idea of beliefs and how our beliefs might block us, what can we do to identify our self-limiting beliefs? And then what can we do to change those to be more life-enhancing?
Well, the one thing is that we just have to convince ourselves. It's amazing how hard it is to convince ourselves of something that we have been taught all our lives and we've experienced all our lives. And the fact that our beliefs create our experiences, we have these beliefs and we experience what that belief is, which validates that experience, and round we go. So we have to just work the process. As the nervous system gets stronger, the mind gets clear. So part of it's automatic. But then one of the things that we can do is we can work with asking ourselves questions and seeing what comes up for us. We can ask ourselves something like, if a belief, and we find out a belief that's blocking us from creating what we want, we can say, is it true? And of course, we believe it is. And so we can say, how do I know it's true? Well, then we have to look at, who told you? How do you know that? Who, if they told you, did they know? And so logically, you can get the intellect to let you get past it. But the intellect is going to stop you every time, if you, until you convince the intellect that it's not true, and you can create something that is true, that you can change that belief, then you can move forward. And again, it's a process.
It's a great way to think of it. In the book Immunity to Change by Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy, they talk about this knowing system that is always organizing our reality. And I describe it as a guardian at the threshold that says, whoa, who told you that? Where did you ever hear that before? How do you know that that's true? And it's actually for our own protection. It's a protective mechanism. And so we want to recognize these self-limiting beliefs, but go easy on ourselves rather than trying to just blow them up. Recognize that it served me up until now. It got me here. And in order to get to that next step, I have to also begin to adopt a new way of thinking about myself, my worthiness, my possibility. And I've always loved your work from the standpoint of, when you talk about being unlimited, it really is everything is possible. The unlimited possibility of our ability to create our lives is at the very core of your message. And I love that. And you have always referred to choices that we make. And it's more than a belief. It's really recognizing ourselves as the ones choosing the reality that we're creating. Now, in my doctorate, I'm a constructivist, so I understand the idea of constructing reality. This is a big part of the way I think. If you could describe these 5 basic choices, I think it's great for our listener to know that these are things that you can do for yourself and check in with yourself every single day.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the first choice is I don't have those in front of me, but I've talked about them for years. But anyway, the first choice is to choose to choose. I guess the first choice is to choose to love yourself, because and that's something that many people can't get to, or I need to work on over time. And the second choice is to choose, to realize that your experiences, that whatever you're choosing is what you're going to experience. So choose to take charge of your lives. Don't just follow the leader. And so it's so easy to just follow the leader. So we choose to love ourselves, we choose to choose, and then we choose health. Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And we choose freedom. And we choose to be free. And of course, it's just us that's keeping us from being free. If we don't feel that we're free, it's us that's keeping us from being free. We get through that. And then we choose to be true to ourselves. And it's like, it's moving beyond the follow the leader kind of thing, and making your own choices and choosing to be true to yourself.
Now, if we make these 5 basic choices, there are a lot of natural blocks, barriers, limitations that are overcome just by focusing on these. So I really love these as core principles to how we can live into our lives. And you often speak of the importance of passion. Bobbie, what is the role of passion in our lives?
Well, passion is basically, we all have a purpose. We have a reason for being here, no matter who we are, whatever. We have a purpose. We have a reason for being here. And that is brought to us through what's important to us, what we are passionate about, what we care about. And so that leads us to knowing our purpose and fulfilling our purpose. If we can stay on track to simply, we just do what we love. We have been so conditioned that we have to do such and such a thing that we don't understand the fact that we actually supposed to be doing what we love to do. Mm. And when we do that, it's very fulfilling for us and we're very successful. And if we're trying to go against that, we will just be very uncomfortable until we wake up, until we realize what we're doing.
So the idea of knowing our purpose is pretty crucial. It's pretty essential to living a fulfilled life. I've often said that purpose isn't necessarily something you create. It's something that's already written on our hearts and on our minds when we come into this life.
That's right.
So if someone isn't clear right now about what their life purpose might be, what advice would you give to help someone get clarity or come to understand or discover what their purpose is?
What do you like? What do you love to do? Do that.
Now, I love to eat pizza and I love to go fishing. Is that my life purpose?
Okay. But the point is, you're here to make a contribution. So what can you do that is going to benefit somebody else, and preferably something they're willing to pay you for? But what can you do to help others? Because we're here for our own personal growth and for the growth to make our contribution to the wholeness. And if you want to go fishing, go fishing. But that might be just what you need to do to get clear about what else that you need to do. Because if we follow our what comes to us, it usually keeps us on track. But we have these beliefs about the fact that we can't do that. Mm. That's usually the thing that blocks us.
Well, it's back to that choice of really trusting yourself, mm-hmm. coming to respect the choices that you make. I also think that we're always doing the best our current awareness permits. And so part of our ongoing work as human beings is continue to learn and grow. This, whatever impulse started the universe, it started expanding. And we're part of that expansion. We came here for that. My grandchild, who was born into the world, is actually born from a more mature universe than the one that I was born into. And so I need to pay attention to what he or she are bringing to the world and respect those gifts. I agree, we're all here to make a contribution. And perhaps it gets back to having a contemplative practice, to be able to pause in the stresses and the overload of a daily existence and to find a quiet time to tune in. I certainly came to understand my life purpose through contemplation and reflection. Mm-hmm. Do you have a meditative practice that you could recommend to anybody?
Well, the one thing that I would suggest is, certainly for starters, is to schedule some quiet time into your life daily, because we are, we've created such a stressful world that we sometimes we just keep going, and we don't have time, or we don't even notice that we're on the hamster wheel and we're just going. but we're not making any progress, and we don't know why, and we don't know where we're going or why we're going. And so if we just get off the hamster wheel and have some quiet time for ourselves every day, that gives intuition an opportunity to come through. It will not come through as long as we're out there busy, busy, busy. We have to have some quiet time. So I would suggest that everybody, if to start to get a feel for this, is to have some quiet time every day.
Now, do you also feel that a specific time, like on a ritual, more of a ritual or routine, has an advantage over just, well, I'll catch it when I can?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a way to start every day. It's what, it's what I suggest is that every day we get up and we do some breathing exercises, and then we do our yoga exercises, and we meditate, and then we have, before we do anything, we do our breathing exercises, and then we have some quiet time, and then we do our yoga and meditation, and then we can work through a focusing technique to be sure that we're clear about what it is we're choosing to create. And so it's the way to start every day. And if you do this, it creates the energy for the whole day. And if you really want to grow fast, you can do it again before dinner. So it's exponential if you do that. If you can only do it once a day, fine, but it's definitely the way to start the day. And it needs to be a habit, because if we get up and say, well, I'll just check the email, or I'll just do this, or I'll do that, something else happens and you don't get your day started right, and it'll be more stressful.
I remember in the early days of learning these mind development techniques, personal growth techniques, I could mark on the calendar the days that I didn't do that practice.
Mm-hmm.
And a colleague of mine and I interviewed 40 of the most successful people we knew and we could get hold of. And one of the questions we asked is, do you have a daily ritual? 100% of them, Bobbie, said yes. It always includes some form of exercise, some form of study, and some form of meditation. Now, the reason I'm saying some form is because it doesn't matter if it's yoga or qigong or whatever.
All kinds of them, yeah.
Whatever technique you're going to use, but the really important thing is that you do have a practice, because if there is one thing that we're always holding very steady, then life can get all kinds of crazy and we'll still be steady. My meditation teacher, Bobbie, used to say that we don't go into meditation so we can elevate our consciousness and then come back into the world and deal with all the issues. We're actually going to that place so we can lift the rest of the world up with us.
Yep, absolutely,
And I do believe that that's what your work has done for all these decades that you've been doing it. I really want to appreciate you for staying here and staying in this work. I loved your husband, Dean, so much. He was just a spiritual giant as well. And having the opportunity to know you, and you used to live just across the street from where I am here. I'm next to Lake Minnewaska. You're right on Smithtown Bay there, and on Lake Minnetonka. And there is a choice that you made to really share these ideas with people. And I'm wondering if, as we finish up, if you could offer any advice when things get overwhelming for us. What can we do to really enjoy the moment, enjoy the process that we're in, and live it into our fuller potential?
Well, one of the things is Eckhart Tolle, I'm sure where many people are familiar with him, is stay in the present. that is really very valuable. And of course, it's choose to choose. It's how saying this is what I'm going to do and doing it, being true to yourself, being true. Yes, I am going to have a daily routine. And of course, I teach what worked for me. It has worked for many, many other people. So I also wrote a book called Unlimited, How Ordinary People Accomplish Extraordinary Things. And so if anybody would like to read about this, the story and how many people, I think you're in there too, Paul, have accomplished what they wanted. You can go to my website at unlimitedfutures.org and get a copy free, a digital copy free. If you want a book, like I like to have a book so I can hold while I'm reading. But if you want a book, you have to go to Amazon and get and purchase a book. But anyway, I think that it's just that, making that choice at what you're going to do and doing it, being true to yourself, and staying in the present, because it's just our thinking that creates our problems. It's when we start thinking about the past or thinking about the future that creates our problems. And if we're used to everything's okay now, so that's probably the best advice I can give.
Thank you so much. And I've often thought of it this way as well, Bobbie, is that sometimes when we're in a really difficult place with ourselves, it's hard to believe in ourselves. But if we surround ourselves with like-minded people who can see in us more than we can see in ourselves,
Absolutely.
Like coming to this podcast, surround yourself with the voices of people who, when they look at you, they see the greater power and potential that's within you.
Absolutely. That's a very good point, Paul. It's so important to stay around or associate with like-minded people.
Right.
There's always lifting you up, and very negative people are pulling you down. So best idea is to stay in the present with like-minded people.
So we'll lock arms and we'll head into a brighter future. Thank you so much, Bobbie. It was great to be with you.
And you have Paraliminals to help with all this stuff, I know. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And
Me as well.
To all the audience. Okay.
Peace and blessings. Bye for now. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Bobbie Stevens. You can learn more about Bobbie at unlimitedfutures.org. That's unlimitedfutures.org. And now in the second part of the podcast, it's just you and me. I'll tell you how to use the Paraliminal sessions in the MINDTRX app to easily handle obstacles and move toward the success you want, especially as it relates to Bobbie's message. If you're new to the relaxing Paraliminal audio sessions, they use breakthrough technologies to activate your whole mind in only 20 minutes and to help improve any area of your life. Let's get going. Welcome to the follow-on session of my conversation with Dr. Bobbie Stevens, as we're talking about unlimiting our lives. There were a lot of pretty interesting ideas that she was sharing as a result of being in this work for over 40 years. And the areas that I'd like to speak to and offer some suggestions around included connecting with your intuition, overcoming stress, which seems to be the biggest killer of our ability to live an unlimited life, changing self-limiting beliefs, maintaining a regular practice that can strengthen our nervous system and help us move forward, being true to ourselves, and finally, following through on the goals that we set. Now, Bobbie is a great model. If you've ever read her story or her books, she has been teaching this idea of establishing a goal, visualizing, accepting it, this what she calls their 7-step creative process. And it is a way of, on an ongoing basis, literally creating anything in your life that you choose. So many examples of it, my own life, my business partners' lives, and also in the experience of her clients. We've got boatloads of examples of people creating amazing results for themselves. All of that, of course, is available to you as well. The first and probably most important thing that Bobbie referred to is this idea of having access to your intuition, because it's through our intuition that we're connected with an infinite intelligence, a universal intelligence. That universal intelligence that brought us here, that's always animating our lives. It's readily available to answer any question we have and help us live our full purpose for being here. But how do we gain access to it? How do we know it? How do we trust it? How do we discern that voice from other voices that might be in our head? This has also been a very important idea for me, something that I have taught to my clients for decades. And I put together a paraliminal to actually enhance it within you. It's called the Intuition Amplifier. You see, there is signal and there is noise. And as Bobbie was saying, there's so much noise. We're just overworked, we're overstressed. And as a result, we really shut down just as a self-protection mechanism. But when we can get the signal to be greater than the noise, now we can truly discern what it is that we are to do. What's our next step to take? How can we move in the direction of the goals that are important to us? Intuition amplifier, super important. The other area is overcoming stress. And from time to time, we do get overwhelmed. There's big problems showing up, big issues. It could be a catastrophe on a global scale. It could be a catastrophe in our home. Whatever may be going on, when our system is overloaded, we have to be able to get out from underneath that stress. And the paraliminal that I designed for that is called Overcoming Overwhelm. I described it briefly in my conversation with Bobbie as I talked about upregulating the brain so we can get into that prefrontal cortex. There's something we can do to calm down that freeze mechanism of the reptilian mind, the fight or flight mechanism of the mammalian brain, or the imbalance of the rational and the emotional brain, or the neocortex. And overcoming overwhelm helps give you a process which in 90 seconds you can do on your own, wherever you are, whatever may be going on. Drain stress out of the system. What that does is it brings your sensory systems back online so you more clearly can orient, decide, and act in your best interest. The third area is the idea of overcoming self-limiting beliefs. She said we all inherit from the culture that raised us beliefs that don't necessarily work going forward. As I referred to them, they're unsustainable practices that need to be changed. And we're in a great period of human transition, or the great human turning to a new world, a new way of recognizing that we're here for each other as one human family, sharing this shining blue planet. So the paraliminal that can help you overcome these self-negating beliefs and create self-enhancing beliefs is called belief. And that paraliminal has 2 sessions. The first session, session A, is about looking at what is the negative belief that's now in place that you would like to rewrite. And the second side is about installing a belief that would work going forward. And there is a 3-step process by which we install any belief within us. There is a moment at which our nervous system gets alerted to what's going on. And then it builds in a process of coping with that. And third is it locks it in. And that then starts to run automatically. It's a symptom producing event, a symptom intensifying event that really locks it in place. But it's the initial sensitizing event, the very first thing that occurs, that kind of gets us oriented toward coping and sometimes dysfunctionally to whatever stress is going on in our lives. So we can actually undo and install following that 3-part process. Very cool. Would definitely recommend it, especially if you recognize that you're under the thumb of a belief that doesn't serve you anymore. The next area is about maintaining a regular practice. We talked about the practice of meditation, of yoga, of focusing your mind on the goals you want to achieve, and all of that. Very important. But we're all busy. How do we do that? Well, it's about being a disciple or a follower of an important process that you have determined for yourself as the way forward. And so the self-discipline paraliminal helps us stay on track, following what we know is best for us. Being able to implement on a regular basis those routines and ultimately those habits that are going to take us all the way to the finish line of the success that we've desired. The next area is about being true to yourself. And I thought there's probably several paraliminals that could help, but a newer one in the collection of paraliminals is called Self-Actualizations. And it's based on Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the top one being self-actualized. But beyond self-actualized, there's one called self-transcendent, which toward the end of his life, Abraham Maslow was really focused on. This idea that we're living a self-transcendent life. We're transcending our lower needs and we're living for a higher good for all concerned. It's a beautiful way of thinking about being true to ourselves because it's about being true to our true self, the capital T and a capital S, our true self, our high self, our infinite intelligence that's really guiding us, living that self-transcendent life that you're here to experience. And the final area is the idea of following through on the goals that you set. It's one thing to establish a goal, have the intention, say that you're going to do it. It's another thing to follow through and actually do it, right? And when there's a split between our intention and our behavior, that split, that breaking point needs to be mended. We need to learn to have intention, bring our attention to it, and then live our life each day with no tension to accomplish what it is we desire. And for me, the most important of all the paraliminals in this is called Get Around to It. And there's 2 sessions to get around to it. One is about there is something that you want to do and you have to get on it. The other one is just a general sense that you're kind of self-sabotaging or you're procrastinating, you're not getting to the things that are important to you. And so both sides will be useful at times. One is to just change that mental model that you may have where you think of yourself as a procrastinator. Really, all we're doing is we're reprioritizing on things that are less important than the things that we say we really want to accomplish. So it's this one session is about overcoming those views of yourself. The other is, here's something specific you need to get to. Let's go get to it. And that paraliminal can serve you in so many different ways. Get around to it. And when you do, anything that you set before yourself, you're going to be able to accomplish. Thanks again for being here. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you for joining me today. I applaud your willingness to maximize your potential. You can easily use the Paraliminal audio sessions in the MINDTRX app to stimulate your non-conscious mind, that is your inner mind, to reduce any resistance in your life and to propel you toward the success you want. Visit MINDTRX.com to learn more. These amazing audio tools have helped millions, and I encourage you to bring them into your world today. Be sure to be back for more episodes of the MINDTRX podcast. You'll find insightful conversations with authors, experts, and thought leaders, all devoted to improving your life's experience. Thank you again for being here on our MINDTRX podcast.